Beneath the glitter of red carpets and the flashbulb smiles, a story has been quietly gathering dust in the shadows. A story Hollywood was never meant to tell. Before millions fell in love with the sound of her laughter and the light in her eyes, before her name was stitched into the heart of every romantic dreamer, there was a woman navigating a world that adored her only when she smiled, and turned its back the moment she didn't. Meg Ryan wasn't just a beloved actress. For years, she was a promise. A promise that love could be gentle, that endings could be happy, and that sometimes the world really could look like a movie. But behind the curtain of all that joy, the truth was nothing like the script she brought to life. How does someone so universally loved become so ruthlessly discarded? How does an icon, once the face of American hope, vanish almost without a trace? Left behind by the same people who once built her pedestal. These aren't just questions about Meg Ryan. These are questions about what happens when a woman no longer fits the mold she was once praised for. Her story isn't simply a personal fall from grace. It's a mirror held up to an industry, and a culture, that turns affection into ammunition and love into leverage. In the golden era of romantic comedies, Meg Ryan reigned supreme. Her performances in classics like When Harry Met Sally and Sleepless in Seattle didn't just make her famous, they made her feel like family. There was something about her, the way she delivered a line, the way her whole face seemed to smile, that felt sincere, almost intimate. She didn't look like someone pretending to be in love. She looked like someone who believed in it. And because of that we believed too. For a while, Meg Ryan was more than a movie star. She was a cultural heartbeat. But while audiences were falling in love with her characters, the woman behind them was quietly being worn down. By fame, by pressure, and by people who should have stood beside her but instead stepped away when it mattered most. The first cracks didn't show in her career. They showed in her heart. Her marriage to actor Dennis Quaid was, on the surface, a perfect Hollywood love story. Two beautiful stars. One shared spotlight. But behind closed doors, Meg was lonely. Her world, so full of flashing lights and magazine covers, was empty where it counted. Quaid's repeated betrayals didn't make headlines, hers did. When her relationship with Russell Crowe became public, the media erupted. Suddenly, Meg wasn't the sweet heroine we all loved. She was the homewrecker, the destroyer of fairy tales. Almost overnight, her reputation crumbled. Studios backed away. Roles disappeared. And Dennis Quaid? He said nothing. While she was dragged through the mud, he stood silently in the wings, allowing the world to believe he had been the wounded party. He never took responsibility. He never defended her. In a moment when solidarity could have rewritten the narrative, he let her take the fall alone. Hollywood didn't just step back. It shut her out. It didn't matter that her performances had made millions. It didn't matter that she had never pretended to be perfect. One scandal, one crack in the carefully constructed image, and the same industry that had praised her purity now punished her for her humanity. The phone stopped ringing. The offers dried up. The applause that once greeted her every step now belonged to someone else. But the betrayal didn't stop with her personal life or with the public. It reached into the darkest corners of Hollywood itself, where real power was never about talent, but about control. Harvey Weinstein's name is now infamous, but before his fall, he was the gatekeeper of serious cinema. And Meg Ryan, eager to move beyond romantic comedies, knew she needed that key. She wanted to prove she could do more, to act in the kinds of films that win Oscars and shift perceptions. But when she approached Weinstein's Miramax for a chance, she was met with contempt. He mocked her ambitions, called her a blonde doll, and made it clear, if she wanted in, it would be on his terms. Meg refused. She would not bend to his power or compromise her integrity. And that was all it took. With a snap of his fingers, Weinstein ensured she wouldn't get the roles that could have redefined her career. Behind the scenes, directors and producers received quiet warnings. Projects once discussed with enthusiasm were suddenly no longer a fit. Her name was erased not with scandal, but with silence. But perhaps the most painful blow came from someone Meg thought was a peer, maybe even a friend. Julia Roberts, America's other sweetheart, was rising just as Meg was beginning to fall. Outwardly, they were portrayed as equals, rivals, maybe, but respectful ones. Yet behind the scenes, Roberts moved strategically. One key role, one that could have marked a powerful return for Meg, was quietly taken from her when Roberts advised the director against casting her. No drama. No headlines. Just a closed door, and another opportunity lost. Julia took the part, accepted the awards, and smiled for the cameras. Meg was left behind, stunned, and wondering when the race had turned into a knife fight. Hollywood loves to pit women against each other. And in this case, it succeeded, turning one woman's comeback into another's conquest. The relationship with Russell Crowe, once a flicker of hope in a storm of rejection, soon turned to ash. When Meg needed someone to stand with her, he stayed silent. When she faced ridicule and shame, he distanced himself. The man she had risked everything for did not defend her. In the eyes of the public, her decisions made her weak, unstable, even selfish. Crowe moved on. Quickly. She was left holding the remains of a scandal she didn't create and could no longer control. And while men like Crowe and Quaid moved through new relationships and projects without question, Meg was stamped with judgment and pushed further into the margins. As if that wasn't enough, the world turned on her face. A single photo, a changed angle, and suddenly every headline was about her appearance. Accusations of plastic surgery spread like wildfire. The warmth once reserved for her smile was replaced by mockery. People who had once admired her beauty now dissected it with cruelty. Why did she change her face? What had she done to herself? But no one asked why she might feel the pressure to change in the first place. Why women in Hollywood, especially those over 40, are expected to freeze time or be cast aside. Men age into character roles and respect. Women age into invisibility. Meg Ryan, once praised for her girl-next-door charm, was now scorned for not staying 25 forever. The industry that celebrated her youth punished her for growing older. And still she tried. She stayed out of the spotlight. She raised her children. She wrote, directed, and quietly built a life away from the noise. But even then, the echoes of her downfall followed. Former co-stars began to speak about her with hesitation. Her name became shorthand for lost potential. The same people who once courted her favor now avoided her altogether. Even women's advocacy groups, once proud to stand beside her, distanced themselves, afraid her scandal might stick to their own reputations. The very things she had stood for, strength, independence, female dignity, were now used against her. Then came the Oprah interview. It was supposed to be a moment of redemption, a chance to explain, to be heard. But instead, it became something else entirely. Oprah, who many saw as a voice of empathy, asked questions that cut deep. Questions that implied guilt, disappointment, failure. Meg answered with honesty. She spoke about healing, about family, about the pain behind her silence. But Oprah pressed on. She asked if Meg had betrayed the dreams of the women who had believed in her. In that moment, everything Meg had fought to reclaim was slipping again. The audience grew cold. The headlines the next day were merciless. Meg Ryan falls apart on national TV. The end of America's sweetheart. No one saw a woman trying to make peace with her past. They saw a spectacle. A cautionary tale. And Hollywood, ever hungry for a new star, moved on. But Meg Ryan didn't disappear completely. In the years that followed, she slowly started speaking her truth. She didn't ask for sympathy. She demanded honesty. She began naming names, not to accuse, but to set the record straight. Dennisquaid's infidelities. Weinstein's blacklisting. Juliaroberts' quiet sabotage. Russell Crowe's abandonment. Oprah's cold interrogation. Each story, once buried or whispered, was brought to light. Not with bitterness, but with clarity. Meg Ryan's story is not one of failure. It's one of resilience in the face of systemic erasure. She may have stepped away from the spotlight, but she did not lose her voice. Today, she uses that voice not to chase applause, but to build something real. She talks openly about the pain of being misunderstood, about the way fame distorts and discards. She speaks for others too. For the women who've been punished for wanting more, for those who love the wrong people, for those who dared to age, to change, to step out of line. Her story reminds us that celebrity is a fragile thing, often built on silence and destroyed by honesty. In Meg Ryan's fall, there is no villain more powerful than the system itself. A system that lifts up women as long as they smile, and then abandons them when they demand more than just applause. But even in her silence, Meg was never truly gone. She was waiting, healing, remembering who she was before the cameras, before the critics, before the world told her who to be. And now, by speaking up, by telling her story in her own words, she's not asking for a comeback. She's reclaiming something far more powerful. The truth. If you found this story moving, revealing, or thought-provoking, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. There are more untold stories behind the screen. Stories that deserve to be heard.